Well, fancy seeing you guys here. I literally ended up taking a multiple month break by accident. But I'm back. I'm back and ready to put in the effort to become consistent again. So, I thought, what can I do to really sum up the last almost 4 month break? A quarterly reading wrap up. So, in the last 4 months, so from June until now, September 1st, I have read 15 books and we will be discussing them today. So, I honestly, in May, I was going through such a bad reading slump. I think I read two books. So, I think June I was trying to compensate a little bit, so I started trying to really force myself to read because yeah, I was just trying to force it because I really, I enjoy reading. I know that's a hot take. You're so surprised. You're like, what do you mean? And wow, okay, I just made this shirt and I realized I did not take these out. So that's kind of embarrassing, but it's okay. Anyways, so, yeah, so I was I know, hot take. I love reading. So I was trying to force it. I was I'm gonna read whatever. It doesn't matter. And I did read whatever because some of these books are really out of my what I would think would be interesting to me. But let's just get into it. Why am I trying to build up some anticipation? It's all good. Okay, so the first book I read was Unsteady by Peyton Corinne. And this book got recommended to me probably through a reel or a TikTok because it's supposed to be similar to the Boys of Tommen series. Literally, it's barely similar. It's barely similar. The writing was just kind of boring. It moved very slowly, and then the plot, I guess I should say, moved very slowly, and then the writing kind of was not the best, and the plotting was not the best, so everything was just a little too slow. A little too slow. So I rated this book 3.25. I think it was interesting at the end, and there's a character in this book that you become more interested in. He's kind of like a villain, but he kind of has an interesting little redemption, and you become more interested in him by the end of the book. And I don't think the next book is following him. I think it's following the main character of Unsteady's best friend, but his book seems interesting. I'm intrigued. So we'll see if I will read that. The next book I read was the Heartstopper yearbook. Again, I was just trying anything to get out of this reading slump because I was not super impressed by Unsteady. I was just oh, okay, a decent read, but I want something to make me feel something. So then I read this because I do love Heartstopper, and it was fine. I gave it not even a rating. I just blew through it because I think it was available on Libby, and I was let me just grab it. Let me just see. It's cute. It's just has a bunch of little extra details from the Heartstopper books that you don't really need to read, but it's just cute. It was just cute. Okay. The next book I read was Long Live Evil, and this is by Sarah Rees Brennan, and if you don't know that name, that means you did not have a Shadowhunters era as a teenager, because this author was always co-writing on the anthologies that Cassandra Clare would put out. And so when I saw that she had a e-arc available on NetGalley, I was please let me get it. And I did. I got it a little early and I blew through it. It was so interesting. I feel did I immediately fall into the world? No, because I feel the first few pages, you're what is this writing? I think I would put it as the way that you would perceive that a writer would write, but it's not actually how they actually write, which is extremely confusing to say, but it's kind of just, it's when a teenager tries to write a book. That's exactly what it is, because it's not quite fully fleshed out the way that a real author that's published would write, but it has that element of just kind of putting and mashing together all the other books that you love. I hope that makes sense. I really don't know if it does, but yeah. And so when I opened that, I was like, what is going on? Like, do I just like not remember this author's writing? Like, was it like this? But no, it was because she was trying to make the like author voice more distinct from like the actual storyline, because this book is following a terminal cancer patient who ends up falling into the world of her favorite fantasy series. And so obviously you have to have some narrative voice distinction to kind of differentiate when the like actual story is happening and then when we're reading about the world or like an excerpt from the like books. I don't know if that made sense, but Long Live Evil, amazing. I think I gave it 4.75. I think now in hindsight I'd probably bring it down a little bit to 4.5, 4.25, but still an excellent book. I think it's already out now. I think it came out like a while ago, but it's great, amazing, totally would recommend it. Okay, the next book I read is Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood, and I was fully filming a reading vlog for this, but then I ended up going back and forth so many times during that reading vlog about if I wanted to finish this book or not that I never posted it, because genuinely what was going on there, because like there was just no chemistry between them, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, of course. Like, I just feel like there was no chemistry between the two main characters. And yes, there was some cute moments, but they just jumped. Well, again, we get the disclaimer at the beginning of the book that this will be reading more like an erotica than like literary fiction and the books that were in the STEMness series previously. But like, I don't know. It was just feeling a little bit like none of the traumas fully got resolved on the part of the male love interest. And it was very focused on the female love interest. And I don't know if all the STEMness series books are like that, where we're focusing more on the woman character. But I really noticed it very prominently in this book. And it was like just bothering me because I'm like, if we're gonna have this whole thing where like they both have some type of trauma and then they cope with it through like just being intimate with each other, okay, but like I need some progression here. Like, I can't just keep reading about this and then like, again, Ali Hazelwood, she's gonna write the same plot multiple times, but I'm gonna eat it up because I love The Love Hypothesis, love Love Theoretically. It was great. Amazing, same plot, but different characters. I still love it. But this, okay, so we obviously know what the conflict is going to be at the end. But I was just like, because I was already not enjoying the romance, the predictability of the plot was annoying too. I don't know, man. But I gave it 3 stars. It's not a terrible book, it's just not my favorite. It had some redeeming qualities. Like, we do at the end get a little bit more of kind of being more comfortable with each other and stuff like that, and Rue, the female main character, kind of developing more trust in people, but like I just feel it was kind of like not my cup of tea and how I would like what I would want to read and how I would want the plot to resolve and like progress. But just my opinion. The next book I read or I listened to was The Cruel Prince, and I have tried to read/listen to this book like at least 2 other times before this, and I always get bored or I'm just like expecting something different and then it's just like not quite hitting. Like, the times that I'm picking it up is because I'm wanting a certain type of vibe. Like, I'm wanting to be like in a fantasy but kind of like a little bit of romantasy vibe. And like The Cruel Prince, whoever started that little idea that The Cruel Prince, like the first book, is a romantasy or like has a heavy romance in it, or not even heavy, but it's present, lies. Absolute lies. Why are you spreading misinformation? There's no romance. Like, it's just, there's like us, like, if the book is like 300 pages, there's maybe like 2 sentences that are like romantic-ish and kind of build up to whatever it is at the end of the series or like in the second book and third book. Like, who told us that this was gonna be romantic? And also, just because I knew who the love interest was, I was like, why is he so mean? Like, why is he, like, it was like, it wasn't even bullying. It was like, you're my arch nemesis. Like, I want you to feel incredibly, incredibly in pain and just, like, never be here. Yeah, I mean, that's just not my vibe for a love interest, you know what I'm saying? But I just pushed through because I was like, you know what? Now I know this book is like a political fantasy and like heavy on the politics. Like 99.99 is politics and scheming and stuff like that, of that nature. And yeah, so then I finally picked it up in the right mood to read it, and I finally read it, and fairly decent. I feel like I would continue with the series. Am I like gunning to get the next book? No, because I read this in June and I haven't continued the series yet. I have the intention, like, eventually. It's like a light intention. It's not like a full intention, but I will probably continue eventually. You know, if the audiobook for the next book is like available, I'll probably listen to it slowly but surely. But it's not, it wasn't like amazing, incredible. So I rated this book 3.5. Again, because I think I had read this book so many times before, I just was a little bit bored. And not that I was, it's not like specifically because I read this so many times before this time, but it's just, not much happens really for like a decent chunk of the book. We're just really sitting in the world for a while before, you know, the actual politicking and scheming comes into the plot and like starts affecting it. But yeah, it was a decent read. Not bad by any means. Okay. The next book I read was Powerful. I actually like did not like that book at all. I rated it 3.25 stars the first time I read it. And again, I haven't reread it or anything, but upon thinking about it in this moment, I really feel that this book is lower in my mind because I think this book single-handedly made me not like Adina, because why is she like tripping everywhere? Why is she falling everywhere? Why are we getting the same metaphor of her falling into love every 10 pages? Like, it's a novella. Like, why are we repeating ourselves so many times? And this entire, whatever, 200, 300 page book just felt like it was just a setup to have the male love interest in this book, Makoto, I think that's how you pronounce it, be in the next book of the actual like series. Okay, this is a spoiler if you haven't read Powerless. I was just waiting for her to die. Like, we see her death from like the outside perspective, and now I'm just like, okay, like, are we gonna get to that point, or is she like gonna die soon? Like, I was just so bored in this book, and I was just trying to finish it as soon as possible because I bought it, and if I buy a book, I gotta finish it. Like, I spent the money, I gotta feel it. I gotta feel the emotions that I'm gonna get from this book, and this book gave me frustration. I think right now, in this moment, me ranting and feeling how I, like, just thinking about how I felt when I read that book, 2 stars. I did not like this book at all. Not my cup of tea. And then I took a step out of my comfort zone, and oh, you know what happened? I'm just influenced. So I was influenced by Larry Reads, and I think she either had posted a video talking about this book, or it was just like an older video that it just popped up on my recommended on YouTube. And I picked up the first book in the Legacy of Gods series. I'm sorry, I fear I ate it up. It was so good, and I was just so intrigued. I was like, this is just, I don't even know how to explain it. I feel like you also have to be in the right, like, headspace, obviously, to read this, because this is, like, dark romance. It's by Rena Kent, who is, like, a dark romance author. Okay, I apologize for the little gap. Perhaps the lighting has changed. I just got a memory card full, bang, turned off. But you don't come here for professionalism, so. Anyways, God of Malice. It was so good. And I think also what could have, you know, impacted my reading experience was that I have never read a dark romance before. So I had like no idea what to expect going in, and I was pleasantly surprised. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars, and I feel like I'm someone that I'm pretty picky with my 5 stars, but it was just really well done. And I just also, again, because I've never read anything else in this genre, I have nothing to compare it to, but I also just feel like I didn't read and think that was trash. So, but I do have to say, I'm not going to count these as books I read because I didn't read a lot of them, but I then tried to read the next books and I thought they were all boring because they all repeat the same story. So, like, it was like verbatim. There's a certain scene in the first book that happens, and when it happened, I was like, oh wow, that's really interesting. But then that exact same scene is just taken and imposed in every single book, and I didn't love that, and I thought it was boring. I know that a lot of people love God of Fury, and so I tried to read that after I DNF'd God of Pain, which is the second book. It was fine until Nikolai did something, and you know, when I was yapping with someone else, they were like, "Oh, it was a mistake. Like, he didn't mean to. He thought that Brandon was his twin brother Landon." And like, okay, but like, I'm just not here for it. So DNF God of Fury, and then I tried the next one. What is it? God of Wrath. I didn't like it. I thought it was not my cup of tea. And then I tried to read the last book, God of War, but like, I think I just didn't care at that point because I was like, this was all happening in the span of one night where I would start, or maybe 2 days. Okay, anyways, so I digress. Like, I was trying to read them and then I'd be like, okay, no, DNF. Next book, trying to read it, DNF. Like, and I would keep going through them. So I was just like, this is kind of annoying. I guess God of Malice was just like a one-off. Okay, so the next book I read is Everything Sad is Untrue by Daniel Nayeri. And I listened to it on audiobook, again from Libby. And I didn't realize that this was a children's book until the end because it was like kind of long. But it's basically recounting the experience of Daniel when he came to America and his experience as a child growing up and his family dynamics and the influence of his Persian heritage and how those experiences in Iran and then coming to America affected just how he maneuvered through life. Okay, I don't rate the books, but it was an interesting read. Like, it's someone's life story, so like, can't really complain. And then the next book I read was Checkmate by Ali Hazelwood, and I had heard so much about this book beforehand that it was weird, not weird, but it was like inappropriately written for young adults because I think this is Ali Hazelwood's only young adult book and the content didn't really match. But I think we need to remember that young adult is young adult. It doesn't mean like a teenager. Like, I don't know. Like, when I think about young adult, I'm like, you're 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Like, you're in that age group. You're not like 12 picking this book up, or like, maybe you are, but like, it's not geared towards you. So like, I don't know. Maybe it's a hot take, but I think it was appropriate and it was great. And I rated this book 5 stars. I love this book so much. I think I just love like chess oriented books because even Queen's Gambit, loved it. Mallory and Nolan, I just like gobbled up their like story because Mallory is just so interesting. Like, I just love that she has such a like good story arc and it makes so much sense for the time in her life that she's in. I think she's 19 or 18. I think she's 18 because she's like end of high school, like starting like in the following year after university has started. But she doesn't go to university, and like the reasons behind that and like how something happened as a kid and she's feeling responsible for that, and so she feels like she owes her family, and there's this whole thing. I just feel like the emotional weight was so well explored in her character, and it was just so phenomenally done. And then having Nolan have this fraught relationship with his family and exploring why, and then it was I'm like fiending for a reread. I then read The Poppy War. So this was a reread for me. I had previously read this, I think 2 years ago, but on audiobook. And so the thing was, on audiobook, I feel like this book reads like really, really, really long. I feel like it takes forever to get through it. And I think just for me personally, I can't read fantasy on audiobook, and I think I've just realized that in the last like year or two, that like it's just not conducive for me to understand what's happening if it's like really intense fantasy or like something of that nature. I just can't follow it, and then it just also feels like a chore to turn on the audiobook and like think about what's happening, and you have to really focus. And I feel like with an audiobook, I usually put it in and I'm doing something else, and I can't really do that if I'm listening to a story of this caliber. So I reread it because I wanted to finish the trilogy, and there was a little bit of a weird pacing in this book, but I also have to remember this was R.F. Kuang's literal first book, so I think, you know, we can excuse it. But I do feel like the pacing was really odd because we have so much time in the school, and then the war aspect just really happened very quickly. We were switching from place to place to place, things atrocity to atrocity. And while that can be obviously intentional, like showing that, like, you know, we just have to keep pushing forward as the reader and as like Rin, the main character, has to do, I didn't personally think it flowed very well. But you know, plot twist after plot twist, I flew through that book very quickly. If you have not read the series yet, or trilogy, I would recommend it. It's kind of historical fiction with fantasy because there is elemental manipulation. And I rated this book 4.5 stars. So it was pretty dang good. And then I read a book I was really, really looking forward to. And sadly, I feel like every book I've been like highly, highly, highly anticipating this year have been letdowns, and I think I just need to stop expecting things from books, because I think maybe that's the problem. I just feel like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have the best time ever, and then when it's like even like a little bit less than that, I'm like, oh no, what's happening? So the next book I read was Play Along by Liz Tomford, and it's following Isaiah and his romance with the athletic trainer as part of his baseball team. So we get the setup for them in the third book in the series, Caught Up, which follows Isaiah's older brother. And we know that they get accidentally married when they're drunk at the end of that book. What an interesting concept, because we know that Isaiah is so down bad for the athletic trainer Kennedy. So that happening at the end, everyone was like, oh my gosh, so excited. I know, I was so excited. And then I picked up the book and I just feel like I didn't really appreciate how much Isaiah was just dismissed. And like, I know that this is something that's like addressed in the book, but I feel like Kennedy didn't really like see him in the most positive light for a lot of the book. And not that she like really hated him or anything, but it was just her perception of him. It wasn't congruent with what he really was like and how he really treated and like appreciated people. I don't know. It was just a very weird aspect to add to the story, to have Kennedy have to move through her preconceived notions about him. And while I can understand that that can come from like her being insecure and the family dynamic that she grew up in and stuff like that, I don't know. It just wasn't my favorite because it lasted for a good, decent portion of the book. So yeah. But, you know, there was definitely, again, cute moments. I also didn't like the first time that they spend the night together, or like they do anything together. It just was like, it came out of anger, and I was just like, I was just not impressed. It was 3.5, so it was, again, decent read. It was just not where I wanted it to be. I think I rated Caught Up 4.75. But then again, I've also DNF'd the first two books in the Windy City series. So, you know, Caught Up has been the only like banger so far for me in this series. The next book I read was Wild Love. So I tried to read this when the book actually came out, and I did not like it because the beginning, we have a lot of like weird offhand comments made by the male main character about his daughter. Just like saying things that were kind of mean about her. And I was just like, you're not, these are inside thoughts. Like, you don't say that out loud to a child. Like, I don't know. It just happened like at least 2 or 3 times. Like, I wish I could, like, sometimes those things happen and I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm just gonna look past it. But then when it happens again, I'm like, why are you reminding me that this just happened? Like, that he's like thinking these like mean things about this kid. Like, bro, why are you like, anyways. I didn't like it, so I DNF'd it. And I was like, no. But I'm a susceptible person. So I saw someone reading it or talking about it, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And I don't remember if I restarted it completely from the beginning, but I have a feeling I did because I didn't really remember too much, I don't think, because this book came out like a hot second ago. Anyways, I digress. I started rereading it, and it was kind of good. I'm not gonna lie. Was it my favorite? No, I didn't think that they had like the best chemistry ever. I think I've just realized that I don't like Elsie Silver's like childhood friends to lovers. I don't like the way she writes it. It very much relies on the fact that when you're reading them, you're putting your emotions onto the characters of how they would feel if they were childhood friends and now they like each other. It's very much only her elaborating on their feelings in the present time and just no real exploration of how they might have felt as kids besides like, oh, they liked each other. It's gonna stay surface level if we're gonna go and rehash what happened in the past. I just didn't enjoy the friends to lovers part. It just didn't flow enough for there to be like chemistry and actual development in the present time for me to really think, oh yeah, it makes sense that they got together. I do think the ending was cute though. I like how everything resolves at the end. It was cute. So I rated Wild Love 4 stars. So the next book I read was Flawless. And the first time I tried to read this, I DNF'd it. I don't really remember why. I bought the series, like the first 4 books, because I was like, oh, these are really cheap, like I'll just buy them. This book was so good. I don't know why I DNF'd it. I loved this book. It was so sweet, so just romantic. I ate this book up. I can't even believe I DNF'd this book. But I'm also a believer in the fact that you sometimes perceive a book differently when you're in the right headspace to read it. So maybe when I was reading it the first time, or trying to read it the first time, I was not in the headspace to really enjoy this book. And I guess I was this time because I rated it 4.5. I love this book. Oh, so good. Summer and Rhett, just y'all were made for each other. It was so good. It was so cute. And I love the character development of Summer just as a person, and that we get so much like side character development. Okay, in the Chestnut Springs series, I just feel like Elsie Silver is really good at putting the kind of sprinkles of other side character stories into the book you're reading without it feeling like it's overbearing and taking over the plot. It's actually like contributing to the plot of the characters that you're reading about, and then you know that it'll come back in the like following or subsequent books. It's so good. Elsie Silver is so good at putting these little just nuggets that if you pick it up, you pick it up. Ugh. Just an artist. The next book I read was The Dragon Republic, and that is the second book in the Poppy War series. I read this book really slowly. I think I started at the beginning of July, and I didn't finish it until like probably end of August-ish. I feel like this was a book with second book syndrome. I think 200-ish pages longer than the first book, and I feel like barely anything happened. It was like there was something that happened that I was like, oh wow, that like didn't need to happen. But it was just really slow. And it was just a little bit like, I don't want to use the word self-indulgent, but like it was just like these scenes that were just a little bit too long for what was really happening. The actual occurrence would take pages, but I feel like it could be summarized much quicker. So I just wish the writing itself was just a little bit more succinct to just make it a little bit shorter. Like, not every second book needs to be longer. Like, you can make it a little bit longer because I get it that more plot has to actually happen. And also in the Poppy War trilogy, like, obviously things are progressing. So I get that more has to happen. But like, what if you read this book, like, think about it. What really happened in this book that it needed to be like 600 pages or 650 pages? Like, just a little bit ridiculous, but it's okay. I love R.F. Kuang. She's a queen. But I rated this book. Let's see. I didn't rate this book. Let's rate it right now. I think I would give it probably like a 4.25. Just because it was just really slow. But I think the things that happened in this book were really interesting. And I think that the consequences of it will come... Obviously, the ending will... Like, the consequences of the ending will come back in the next book. But I think even, like, the psychological aspects of the things that Rin went through here, where she's kind of... is forced to grow into herself in this book more. I feel like we're going to really see her progress much more into... being more solid in herself and her abilities and things like that in the next book. So I'm excited. But I think this book, 4.25. We'll do that. Okay, and then we've reached the last book. So the last book I read is Heartless. And don't get me started. I love Heartless. And the first time, again, that I was reading Chestnut Springs, DNF Flawless went right into Heartless. And I flew through it. Literally could not pry that book out of my hands. I was just flying. I loved it. I love Willa. I love Cade. I love Willa's ability to bond with Luke, like Cade's child. And they have just like the most beautiful relationship. I love that Cade like falls in love with Willa, falling in love with Luke. He just sees how much Willa cares for Luke and will do anything to protect him and make him happy. And then that just makes him love Willa even more. And then just all these cute little things that would happen. Like, are you kidding me? Like, so sweet. However, like I was mentioning, I think the mindset when you're reading something that you're in kind of alters the book. So this book, when I was reading it so slowly. I think it's also because I knew it was going to happen, so I wasn't like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder where this is going to go. Like, I already kind of knew, and like, did I remember, like, do I have a photographic memory? No. I didn't remember every single thing, so some things was like, oh, that's so cute. I didn't remember that. But, I don't know. I just didn't read it really fast, so I think that affected my rating. I think I would give it 4 stars. It just didn't give me that feeling of any higher. Like, I feel like my ratings are all just, like, from my gut. Like, there's no real reason. I just feel it. So, I just think maybe I don't know. Maybe I just didn't get those, like, butterflies reading it the second time. Okay, I actually lied. So, the last book I have is Powerless by Elsie Silver. And, wow, I did not enjoy this book. Like, there was... just so many elements. I was just like, what is happening? Again, I think that this is the book that made me realize I don't know if I like Elsie Silver's Childhood Friends to Lovers. I just don't think enough time is spent on development and, you know, healing that kind of past when like one person likes the other as a kid, and then like healing that kind of dynamic. Like, there's just such a weird, like, it feels like a power dynamic. It's not like you feel like there's a power dynamic, but it's just like one person is so clearly more invested than the other. And it's just, I don't know. And like, I get that Elsie tried to like, throughout the book, fix that and be like, Jasper always liked her, but like, no. No. It never felt that way. Like, there's not one moment I read this book and I was like, yeah, Jasper liked her. Anyways, I did not like Powerless. I think the ending was very cute, like seeing the family together, like seeing, you know, kind of things are happening a little bit like into the future. And, you know, we get a cameo from like one of my favorite couples in the series. Loved it. But Sloane and Jasper are a no for me. No. I'm so sorry. Like, Jasper, just a little bit too weird for me in, like, a series that's, like, pretty wholesome, I would say, and very, like, I don't know. He was just a little bit too, like, out of left field, and I wasn't expecting it, and I just, no. I'm sorry. What am I reading? Okay, well, not to leave on that note, but that was the last book of my third quarter. So I hope to see you in the next book. Are we meeting in a book? We're just living a novel love story. I'll see you in the next video, and thank you for listening.